Good morning. My name is Rabbi Wyne of Young Israel Aish of Las Vegas, and welcome to Life is Great, where every Sunday we take another universal value that is derived from Judaism and explore it to give you that best possible life. Today we want to talk about something that is very, very special and very important, perhaps one of the most important things that any of us will ever encounter. We want to look at how do you see the world? How do you see the world? How do you evaluate situations? We all look at things in a different light, in a different way. Some people are extremely optimistic. Some people are a little pessimistic. Some people are kind of neutral and coasting. Everyone has a different temperament. But how do you see the world? That might be a little too big of a question. So instead, why don't we say, how do you see this glass? When you look at this glass, how do you describe it? Well, I went out to one of my favorite coffee beans, and I asked several of you how you would describe such a thing. Let's hear what you had to say.
Yes.
Audrey, when you look at this glass, how do you see it? How would you describe it?
I would see it as half full.
Really? Now, did you see most things in life that way?
I try to.
How beautiful. And what's your name?
Shelley,
Shelley. How would you describe this glass?
half full, same as Audrey.
And you see all of life that way, basically?
Pretty much so.
Pretty much so. What are some of the things that you don't see as half full?
You want me to go into politics or what?
That's a great answer. And Barbara, how would you describe this glass?
Half full.
Half
Sure.
full?
Yeah.
Do you see most things in life that way?
Absolutely.
How beautiful. Okay.
I would describe it as half full.
Okay. Now, do you look at most things in life that way?
I guess you could say that, and to some extent. I mean, in the same classification as like a glass of something of some sort.
What are some of the things that you would look at as, say, half empty?
Ooh, under like food and beverage, or just like a whole aspect of like anything in life.
In life.
Ooh, I mean anything from your gas tank to a room that you enter. You know, a lot of things.
It's half full.
Half full. Do you look at most of life this way?
Depends on my day, I would say.
Okay. What are some of the things that you look at as half empty?
Half empty. I don't know, if you're having a bad day, things just don't seem as good as possible, you know. It's
Okay.
half empty. So.
All right. Okay.
Half full.
Clear.
Clear. Nice. Tell me something. Do you look at most things in life as half full?
Yes, I try to. Being around him, he's helped me to look at things more.
He gives you clarity
Yes.
of things. Beautiful. What are some of the things that you don't see as half full?
On the spot.
I know, right? As half full. My coffee after I drink it here in a minute. Is that okay?
Okay, welcome back. You know, it was interesting. Different people view things in a different light. Well, how do I see this particular glass? Well, I will tell you. One person might describe it as half full. We heard many of those responses. One person might say half empty. It's almost that people would be a little embarrassed to say that. If you are in touch with a very deep Jewish mystical, Kabbalistic concept, then you'll say, actually, it's completely full. It's half full of tea and it's half full of air. Which one of these three descriptions are correct? All of them. All of them are correct. It is half full, it's half empty, and it is completely full, half of tea and half of air. The difference is that when we look at something, we evaluate its value to us. Many times, people who are looking at life in a way that's a little contracted, they will see the negative side of any situation. And some people that almost force themselves to be a little more optimistic and a little more full, they say, oh, it's always full. As I said, both are correct. But perhaps the deepest way to look at life is to understand that everything in life contains good and everything in life contains something that has a different value. I didn't say bad. I said it has a different kind of value. So when I look at that glass, I'm saying it's half full in many respects. And that perhaps is one of the most optimistic ways to view the world. Now, again, once a person accepts the ideas that we can control our thoughts, then you will have a marvelous life. Because remember, our thoughts control our emotions. And once we have a certain emotions, that leads us to particular deeds in the world. So, everyone has challenges and everyone sees different things in different ways. There's a story in the Talmud about there's a rabbi who's walking with some of his students from one city to the other. And they're walking along the roadside. They see a dead dog, a smelly, dead, rotting carcass. And the students say, Rebbe, please, stay away from that. It's horrible. And the rabbi, always wanting to teach his students a lesson, says, yes, but look how white his teeth are. What's the point of it? You look at that and you say, wait a second, I could say it's a smelly, gross carcass, or I could identify the one positive thing, the one good thing about that particular situation. But it almost takes a great rabbi to figure that one out. But it really doesn't take a great rabbi to figure that one out. It takes commitment to finding the good in every situation. The more commitment we have to see the good in the situation, and the more practice we make in order to identify the good in every situation, the more successful we will be at that. There's a lot of humor about people that don't see things in the most positive light. The story told of a particular man who wanted to give his aging mother a gift, so he sent her on a trip to Europe. When he picked her up after the trip, he said, Ma, how was the flight? And she said, the seat was a little too cramped, and I was a little uncomfortable, a little turbulence. Well, he said, Ma, they gave you food on the flight, right? She goes, oh, yeah, well, how's the food? Ugh, it was terrible. It was tasteless. It was hard. It wasn't warm. And the portions were so small. A lot of times people view the world in such a way. Kvetch, kvetch, kvetch. And then after they complain, they turn around and find something else to complain about. Well, we know if we want to have a successful life, a great life, if you want to know that life is great, then you got to find the great aspect in everything. Everything. So the question is really, how do you go about doing that? How do we find the silver lining in every cloud? There's a beautiful piece of Talmud that says a concept that for most people is just almost beyond their reach. But I'm going to share with you the way to bring it home and allow this concept to really enhance your life. I'm going to say the phrase in Hebrew, and then I will repeat it in English. It says, Kashem shemavarech ala tov, kach mavarech ala ra. That means that just like a person says a blessing over the good in his life, he also has to say a blessing when the bad happens. Imagine this for a moment. It's not just saying the words, it's having an emotion that is similar. If you were to win $1 million, how would you feel? You'd probably feel like $1 million. If someone in your family, God forbid, would get very sick, how would you feel? You probably would not feel so well. Well, according to this teaching, this ancient Jewish teaching, a person has to have the same emotion when something good happens to them as when something bad happens to them. How do you do such a thing? The only way to really do it is to stop and identify, to understand that there's a God in this world who's running the world. There are no coincidences, and nothing happens without ultimate purpose and meaning, and therefore everything that happens is actually good. Now, this is actually reflected in the blessings we say. See, when something good happens to us, we arrive at a holiday, or a person, has a graduation, or they win $1 million, they say a blessing that says, thank you, God, for sustaining us and keeping us alive to this season. In other words, we say this often, thank you, God, for keep giving me life and keeping me alive. As a matter of fact, the first words out of a human being's mouth when they wake up in the morning should be, thank you, God, for another day. When something bad happens, like a person's parent dies, then we say a blessing as well. And that is the blessing of Baruch Dayan HaEmes, which means blessed is the true judge. That is an understanding that event that I interpret as negative and bad, that event was decreed from on high. When I understand that there's a God who's running the world, you know what? good things happen to me, and things that I interpret might be painful or negative, they also happen to me, but they're also from the Almighty. Now, this is characterized in another story from the Talmud about a great sage named Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived about 2,000 years ago, and he's traveling along, and when he's traveling, he has a few things with him. He has his rooster, which is his alarm clock. He has a torch, which is his flashlight, and he has a donkey. So he comes to a particular town. And when he shows up at the town, he's a stranger. They don't have a hotel. So he goes and he asks people for lodging. Do you have an extra room I can stay in? And people didn't know who he was, so they were not so generous with extending an invitation. So it turned out he could not find a place to sleep, and he went to the outskirts of the town, and he set up camp. Well, he said to himself, everything God does is for the good. If I got to sleep in the forest, I sleep in the forest. At that night, the wind came and blew out the torch, and he said, you know what? Everything God does is for the good. And then came an animal and killed the rooster. Because, you know what? Everything that happens from the Almighty is good. And later on that evening, another animal came, killed the donkey. He said, I lost my car too. You know what? Everything that happens from the Almighty is good. Well, he wakes up in the morning, a little late because he didn't have a rooster, and he goes back to the town, and he finds out that night there was a band of roaming bandits, of criminals, that went through and they pillaged the entire town. And he said, how amazing was that? If I had slept that night in the town, I too would have been robbed. And if my torch was still lit, they would have found me out, or they would have heard my donkey, or they would have heard my rooster, and maybe I also would have been attacked. Everything the Almighty does is for the good. Now, this is not just like a nice little story that we tell our children, although it is a Jewish consciousness story that everyone should tell their children. But at the same time, Rabbi Akiva is teaching us an important way about viewing the world. And that is that everything the Almighty does is good. It's not that after the fact I figure out a way to rationalize to myself to say, let me live in a la land, and everything will be good. No, that's not what it is. It's an identification of reality. If I'm a person that is conscious of the Almighty's kindness at every time, at every moment, so then I will be a person that will identify and evaluate situations as good. Remember, so much happens in my mind. Every situation I can say is good, or I could evaluate as bad, or I could say it's neutral. Which one are you? Which one do you want to be? And if you're a person of faith, then chances are it will be a lot easier for you to stop and evaluate things for the good. There's an old story told about a particular group of students that went to the rabbi and said, Rabbi, you taught us that piece of Talmud that says just as a person should bless on the good, so too they have to bless on the bad, and they should have the same kind of emotion when good things happen to them and when bad things happen to them. They said, Rabbi, we understand that everything's supposed to be good, but we're not quite getting it. So the rabbi said, you know what? There's an old man. He lives in a certain place. He's a very holy person. He spends his whole day studying Torah and doing acts of kindness for people. He has been sick his whole life. His wife died. His several children all died. He has been poor. You know what? Go ask him. This is a person who suffered so much. Ask him how he would interpret this piece of Talmud. So they go over to him. They knock on the door. They say, you're Rabbi Zusha? He says, yes, I am. They said, our rabbi came and told us that we should ask you, how is it that a person could have the same emotion when something good happens to them and when something bad happens to them? Whereupon Rabbi Zusha said, well, why did he send you to me? I've never suffered. It's interesting. See, Rabbi Zusha, he didn't view anything that happened to him as suffering because he understood what Rabbi Akiva taught. He understood that everything that's happening is for the good. So if he saw meaning in everything and purpose in everything, then nothing was bad. So there is only one emotion to have. There's only one way to evaluate everything. We know Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And if you've ever read the book, you'll know that Viktor Frankl was a person who survived the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz. And that's where he came up with his whole way of viewing the world, of saying those people that were in Auschwitz, that were in a concentration camp, those people that could see meaning and purpose in their difficulties, they were people who oftentimes even survived the war, but they didn't get depressed through their suffering. they found meaning and purpose. But those people that could not find meaning and purpose in their challenges, those were people who eventually evaluated life's events to the negative, and after they evaluated life's events to the negative, so then the negativity actually conquered them. Now, lest you think for a moment that all of this is just a bunch of mind games, I assure you it is not. There is a story told about a particular person. He's a prince who thought he was a chicken. So, he was a chicken, and he took all of his clothes off and hung out underneath the table and went cluck, 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 cluck. So the king was very disturbed, so he called up and he said, where can we find someone to cure my son who thinks he's a chicken? So what happened, they found a particular wise man who walked in the room, and he said, Your Majesty, I can cure your son. He took off his clothes, and he went underneath the table, and he started going cluck, 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 cluck. And the prince said, What are you doing? He says, I'm a chicken. He goes, and the prince said, cluck, 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 me too. So they're clucking away. Finally, that wise man put on some clothes. And the naked prince said, What are you doing? And the wise man said, Listen, just because I'm a chicken doesn't mean I can't wear clothes. Cluck, 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 cluck. You should try it. So the prince put on some clothes, continued acting like a chicken. And then eventually, the wise man took the prince, said, Hey, let's go cluck over here. Not underneath the table, but let's walk around normally. He said, What do you mean? He goes, Just because we're a chicken doesn't mean we can't walk around normally. And eventually, step by step by step, that wise man cured that crazy prince. Because even though the crazy prince, in a certain sense, said, Hey, maybe I'm a chicken, at the same time, he started seeing the world in a much broader way. Now, it's not just a game. It's that if we identify and evaluate life's events to the positive, then we will live a magnificent life. And if we understand, first and foremost, that, in summary, our thoughts are in our control. We control our thoughts. Our thoughts lead us to our emotions, and our emotions lead us to actions. When we can evaluate life's events in the positive, and you can evaluate life's events in the positives by understanding there's a God in the world who has meaning and purpose for every one of us. When we evaluate life in such a way, we will see the good in situations, and if we practice seeing the silver lining in every cloud, so then we will walk around more often with a smile on our face, and even when difficult situations arrive, just as the Talmud says, we should evaluate it as good, because we know it's good, we will see even the most difficult of situations in the best of light. My name is Rabbi Wyne. I want to thank you for being here with me on Life is Great. Don't go away. We're going to be back in just a moment with more of Life is Great and the Rabbi's Inbox.
So we walk around with a piece of paper in each pocket. This one says, the world was created for me, and this says, I am but dust. Life is Great, the TV show, was created for you. The Rabbi Show, the radio show, was created for you. It's great stuff. Just this morning, I went on www.therabbishow.com and I made a donation. It's so easy. You get right into PayPal, you put in your credit card information, it's a secure site that you trust. Takes under a minute. Please join me in supporting this great programming that makes the world better.
Do you know someone who needs a little more happiness in their life? Maybe it's you who needs more happiness in your life. Yes, you've seen the Life is Great TV show. You perhaps have heard the Rabbi Show. But now it's time to get Life is Great, Revealing the 7 Secrets to a More Joyful You. This book was something tangible that you can give your friends and family, where they can keep by their bedside, take it on vacation, leaf through it page at a time or chunk of pages at a time, and each time they will learn another secret, another tool that they can use in order to get the absolute most out of life. What better present can you give your friends and family than the wisdom to live a better life? Welcome back to Life is Great. My name is Rabbi Wyne, and this section is called The Rabbi's Inbox. This is your opportunity to send me an email at rabbi@therabbishow.com, and I promise you I will respond to your question, and I might even put it on the air and read it for everyone to benefit. This question is especially difficult. Dear Rabbi, I've enjoyed reading and rereading your book, Life is Great. However, your chapter about seeing the good in all things continues to give me discomfort. How can you support the argument that we should look for the good in even the worst of the bad? If a child of yours was attacked or raped, what good would you really see in that? Was it meant to be? Maybe. But good? Really? Fantastic question. There are things in life that we see and we know are horrible. We know they're horrible. You know what those things do? They actually prove the existence of God. It's an interesting idea, but think about it just for a minute. If a person does not believe in God, then the worst thing I can say is I dislike something. Then an ant is no more valuable than a human being, or I should say a human being is no more valuable than a dog, and everything is equal. And there are actions that I like and actions that I don't like. But if there's no God, if there's no absolute standard of morality, there's no good or bad. So therefore, if something happens and we look at it, we say, oh, that's really evil, that's terrible, then the worst thing that we can say is, I dislike it. So in reality, when things happen that are so painful that we have no choice but to emotionally feel that they are bad, because no matter how much we use our minds, we can't see the good in the situation, that is a proof of an all-knowing, all-involved God. And then, once you realize that God is running the show, then you have to see that there's purpose and meaning behind it. So, remember, there are two kinds of bad things that happen. There are bad things that people inflict upon others, and because we do know that people have free will, we can answer up by saying, listen, okay, God didn't do it, bad people did it, and that's a bad thing. But then there are those things like hurricanes, cancer, that are not inflicted by people. Those are acts of God, so to speak, and they are bad. And emotionally, we feel bad and we feel pain and suffering that they happen. But that emotion that we feel, that evaluation that I can't see the good in here, that is the proof that there's an all-knowing and all-involved God. Obviously, this topic needs to be expanded upon and more deeply explained. But for now, I want to answer this person to say, thank you for sending me the question. We know that every decent person can never feel good about anything bad happening. But we have to understand, even when we don't feel good about something bad happening, we have to know that that is evidence that the Almighty exists, because such a thing as bad as evil would exist. And if there's no God, then the worst thing that could exist is something that I dislike. All right, my name is Rabbi Wyne of the Young Israel Aish of Las Vegas. I want to thank you so much for being with me again here at Life is Great. I want to give you a blessing that you should have an absolutely wonderful week. And we'll see you next week with more of the Life is Great.
So every week, one of my pleasures is the Life is Great show. Life is Great every Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m. You can stick it in your DVR, your TiVo, and it's relevant, it's actionable information taught by a man who is just so easy to listen to and explains things so clearly. And you know, every time I take a class from Rabbi Wyne or watch one of his TV shows, I think he's talking right to me and about me, and really addresses the issues that I'm addressing in my own life. And yeah, that ancient wisdom that's been around for thousands of years, there's a reason it's still around. The crowd that's been using it is a pretty discerning crowd. And so check it out. Join me Sunday mornings, 8:30, Channel 6 on the CW. Life is Great.
Go to therabbishow.com today. Make a donation, and Rabbi Wyne will send you a free Jewish calendar for the new year, along with his personal blessings. All donations are tax deductible and help us share positive values which make the world a better place for everyone.
I have a question for you. what do you think the world would be like if Apple Computer had stopped at the Mac, or maybe at the iPod? If they hadn't grown, if they hadn't done more, if they hadn't found other ways to have us all enjoy the pleasures of life. Are you stuck? Are you stuck on your iPod? Did you think maybe your life would have more to it? You know, are you as good a friend as you can be, as good a mentor, as good a student, as good a parent, as good a sibling, a child? Well, the desire might be there. A big struggle in life is to do what you want to do over what you feel like doing, and you know, you want to be skinny, but you love that chocolate ice cream. So your desire to perhaps do more, it's got to inspire you to take some action. And I'm going to help you out. I want you to take some action right now and find your keyboard and type in www.therabbishow.com. The third tab over will say Donate. And this will be a way for you to show yourself that your desire has inspired you to take some action. Invest in our programming. Invest in what we do. Invest in making the world a better place. And the more you invest in it, the more you're going to want to come and check it out for yourself. And you'll come to a class, and if you do, please introduce yourself to me. And hopefully I'll be there at that class too, doing what I want to do over just what I feel like doing. Look forward to meeting you.
Want more wine? Turn your radio to AM 720 KDWN or go online to therabbishow.com to hear The Rabbi Show starting right after the news at 9 a.m.
One of the things that's really unique about an Orthodox synagogue, and I think Young Israel Aish in particular, is that not only do I know everybody's name, I know your dog's name. It's really about a personal relationship, about everyone should have a relationship with a rabbi. Judaism teaches us that every person needs a rabbi, you need a friend, and you need a student to really get the fulfillment of wisdom, to really understand what life is about. I'm always explaining the concepts in the Torah, in the Bible, explaining Jewish values and challenging people to understand what those values are. All the wealth God gives me is really in order that I should benefit others. Spreading Jewish values, positive universal values. Those are the things that have led us to have a YouTube channel that has more than 250,000 views on it. It's the weekly radio show, The Rabbi Show, with its own unique website. We do trips to Israel every single year. But my rabbi told me the most important commandment is to live life with joy as much as possible. Because if you have joy and enthusiasm and passion about life, if you really feel the Almighty's love at every corner, so then you will have the direction and the enthusiasm and the energy to fulfill all of the other commandments.